full-time armed security guards. They had to hire 150 part-time security guards. And that $3.7 million was for a school system that had 50% less schools than we do here in Jefferson County at the time. So it's not an inconsequential cost. Our schools are strapped as it is. I'd much prefer they spend money on my children's education than on a metal detector that gives some false sense of security when oftentimes they're not effective. Anyway, those are the reasons. I thought it was interesting that an 11-year-old could come up with the same reasons that I was able to dig up through all the research that I did, but I certainly appreciate the opportunity to kind of put that out there.
Thank you, Mr. Goodwin. Let's go to the neutral table, and anybody at the neutral table have any comments or questions based on what we've heard from the pros and cons? Go ahead.
Well, I'm a student. I'm a student at PRP, and I do feel like having a metal detectors would just make it more difficult to get to school. Like, we already have tardy hall. I don't know about other schools having tardy hall, but we have tardy hall. If you're late to class, then you miss the class period. If you come late to school, you miss the class period. If you can't get to class by 7:40, then you miss the class period. If you go to tardy hall 3 times, then you miss a day of school. Then you have a day. They call it timeout, but it's in school suspension. So, sometimes people are late to school. Like, how would that work with the metal detectors? Like going through a metal detector, I think it would just be too time consuming. And I do think it will take up too much money. I think it will create more problems than it will solve. I don't feel like we have that big of a gun problem where we need to spend this much money on metal detectors.
Thank you. Let me ask Mr. Cavendish at the neutral table. Keith, former prosecutor and very prominent criminal defense attorney, many cases, many trials with gun violence. And what about that comment that guns aren't a problem here in Louisville, and anything that you have in terms of what we've heard from the pros and cons? What are your thoughts?
Guns are a problem everywhere. Everywhere in the United States, every city block, every county, every state, federal property, state property. We have way too many guns in the United States, and they're getting in the hands of the wrong people who use them for the wrong reasons. I think we can all agree to that. The real issue is, what do we do about it? And that's what we're going to debate for a long time to come. There's something that I do disagree with Mike on, where he says that students feel less safe by going through a metal detector. I try to live in the real world, not what the world should be. That's for the politicians. Today, metal detectors are so commonplace that you hardly notice them anymore. You go to the airport, you go to a metal detector. You got your kid with you, they go to a metal detector. How many have discussions of whether or not their kid feels less safe? You go to the Young Center, you go to the basketball game, your kid goes to the metal detector. Do you have a discussion that your kid's not safe? You go to the Derby, you bring your kid. You go through the metal detector. Are they afraid of the Derby? You go to the Cincinnati Reds games. I heard they're going to implement it. Are they going to be scared of baseball? You go to Rupp Arena. You take your kid. You go through the metal detector. I can't tell you how many metal detectors I go through. I go through one every day at the courthouse. Do I feel less safe in the courthouse? That's irrational fear. As a parent, you need to sit your kid down and say, no, it does not make you less safe to go through a metal detector. We have problems in this country, and we're trying to address them. And this is one of the ways. You are not less safe by going through a metal detector. Or you can pray on it and tell about all the horrible things in the world, and that it could be a victim at any time. Well, I don't live my life that way. Metal detectors do have a place in this world. And you're going to see in the future, they're going to become more and more commonplace. So let's deal with it through education.
Let me ask this, and this is for anybody on the panel. This idea of cost and the benefit. I would think that obviously we as lawyers, we know statistics can be drummed up to support anything. You got lies, damn lies, and statistics, as Mark Twain said. You know, you can make an argument that in terms of your average school, you spend a whole lot of money, put a whole lot of effort into it. You got more chance of that school being destroyed by a tornado than you do of a kid opening fire inside that school with a gun. You can make that argument. Who would make the argument that we should spend millions and millions to tornado-proof our schools? Who would make that argument? Or to earthquake-proof here in Kentucky? So, is the cost, is the investment really worth it in terms of the type of effort that would have to be made to make our schools as close as possible to being safe from handgun violence? Anybody on the panel have anyone have thought? Yeah, Ms. Murphy.
I think the cost is relevant and important. I've got a microphone from Trojan. I think the cost is always going to be a factor because, I mean, Keith said we live in the real world, not the fantasy world, and in the real world there is a budget. In the real world in Jefferson County, on some mornings we have 8 school bus drivers that don't show up for work. We don't have a replacement for them, and we have 8 school buses full of children who aren't going to get education that day at all. Their parents aren't ready to provide daycare. They're going to have to miss work or make other plans. The kids can't get to school. There are a lot of things that we know would have direct benefits to the students of the Jefferson County schools that we could spend money on. What will happen in a practical setting, I think, without being a soothsayer and being able to predict the future, is that there'd have to be decisions made about where the metal detectors, in a perfect world, there'd be enough money to, if the decision was made by the community with the input of board members and everyone else, to put a metal detector in every school. I suspect that wouldn't happen. I suspect there'd have to be some decisions made about where metal detectors were put and where staffing was beefed up, where sheriffs were paid, policemen were paid to staff those metal detectors. Then you have the problem of stigmatization. Then you've got the problem that you have schools and you have children who, in our community, in the entire United States, we're divided. And we have people who, we have haves and have-nots, and we have a community that thinks they're a nation that thinks we're divided. So what happens when, out of the school buildings in Jefferson County, a particular subset of those school buildings get metal detectors? Or you can put it another way, they won't look at it as an advantage. They'll be told, you all need metal detectors because of the kind of people you are, is how it'll be perceived. Nationwide, here's how that stigma works. 26% of all African American students in our junior highs and high schools walk through metal detectors every morning. Only 5% of the white kids in our nation walk through metal detectors every morning. This is a different education. One way or the other, whatever a parent can say, whatever a parent does to sit a child down and say, don't worry, we're making you safer. The fact is that kid knows he's going to a school where he has to be protected with police and armed guards and a metal detector, whereas the kid who lives out in Lake Forest doesn't have to. And this is the kind of dividing that we need. We need more education time. We need time in classrooms. We need to pay buses and bus drivers to be able to get kids to class. There's no way, and this is living in the real world, that the implementation of metal detectors at schools, at any school, won't materially decrease time in classrooms for children. It has to, unless we extend the school day, which we're not going to do. And unless we have magic metal detectors where people run through in the morning, like kids run through to get to school on time, then kids are going to spend 15, 20, 45 minutes a day on the average, some of them, not in class, but standing in line, which not incidentally, from a police and security perspective, standing in line, waiting to go through a metal detector, is one of the most dangerous places a person can be if somebody intends to do them harm. So I think the cost is relevant. That was your question, and I went on a little bit because I'm a lawyer. But my point is that we risk stigmatizing schools, student bodies, and entire sections of our population when we have to make the budgetary decision about who gets the metal detectors.
Felicia.
I almost couldn't let him finish because I'm a lawyer too. Here's the one issue that I want to touch on that Mr. Murphy talked about is the idea of stigmatization, and that I think the statistic was 25% of African American children go through medical detectors and only 5% of white children. Well, that has more to do with white privilege than it does with the actual statistics, because we know that almost all of the mass shootings that have happened have been against white children. And maybe if the white children had had metal detectors at those schools, they would not be in the ground and in the grave right now. Those black students are pretty safe, actually, because they know that they cannot bring a gun to school because someone will detect it. Now, whether that's a stigma or not, I'm not going to debate that point, but I'll tell you those 25% of those students at those schools are safer, because we had a mass shooting here in Paducah. I believe most of those children were white. I think that most of the children at Sandy Hook were white. So I don't think the idea that black kids will be stigmatized because they go to metal detectors is a cogent point. I think the issue is whether we as a community decide we're going to spend our dollars in a way that keeps children safe. We already have a school system that spends most of its money on administrative salaries. We already have that, and we can't seem to get that taken care of. Okay, my sister's a teacher, and she's an extremely hard worker. She actually teaches English as a second language, so she has all immigrant students, and she brings her work home every night, and she works hard, and she loves those students. Okay, some of them are even 19 and 20 years old. They want to be an American. The parents want to be Americans, and they're over here trying to be Americans and trying to learn in our system. So there are dedicated people there, and I want them to all be safe. Those kids come from war-torn countries. They're trying to get here. Wouldn't it be a tragedy if they got shot in a school in the United States of America? I just think that it's. I never understand the issue about money. We have money. I have money. I would have more money if I wouldn't eat out every day, but I like to eat out. I would have more money if I didn't buy as many shoes as I did, because I bought 3 pairs last week. Okay? I've decided where I want to spend my money. I can have a much better 401k, but I'm a shoe, a holic. So we decide where we want to spend our money. There's money there, and there's money to be found. I just think that we have to decide where we want to spend it, where we want to spend it.
Let's hear from Shirley Mormon. If you are you a parent?
No, I'm a parent advocate. I go to school and help parents with the parents' conference and stuff. So I deal with a lot of different parents. And what I'm hearing is we all want our schools safe. We all want this. But then when I look at bringing metal detectors in, it's very complicated. Because some kids will feel that it's wonderful, and some kids will feel like, somebody gonna shoot me today? So we are not thinking about how the kids really gonna feel about this. I don't understand. We always bring these problems. No one asks the kids how they feel. When are we gonna let the children be responsible and the children talk about how they feel about their safety? And what is the root cause of these kids bringing guns to school? We're not going to settle the problem by just putting metal detectors up. We need more psychologists, psychiatrists. We need nurses. We need people to talk to these students and find out, why are they bringing guns to school? Why are they so angry? And how can we help them in that realm? I mean, mental health is a big issue, but we don't want to put money in mental health for some reason. So until we start talking to the kids, getting them the right help that they need, we're not going to solve this problem, because I feel like this. You can have those metal detectors. As soon as they walk outside that school and go 5 yards, you can shoot them up. So that's not solving the problem. They can have their gun outside that school building. So don't think kids will not figure another way how to do it. So we have to find out what's going on inside the school. And I know social media plays a big part with them being on Facebook, and somebody says something about me and I say something about them, and then they get mad. They want to shoot or kill each other. How do we interject in this?
That brings up, we have Sean Oates from Trial Visuals. He runs a business that provides video work for legal and business purposes. Let's take a look at our screen here, and that'll help us with our next question. Go ahead. That's Javante Burrows, Fern Creek victim, 2014. He was shot inside a school. This photo was sent out in the media, put over on the TV. He was shot in the gut. A little bit different angle, a little bit different circumstances, and he would have been a fatality. He suffered quite a bit in terms of his injuries. Next photo. 2 days ago in San Francisco, there was a school shooting. It was outside, it was not inside like Javante Burrows. My question to anybody on the panel, particularly to the pro table, is kind of along the lines of what Ms. Moorman's saying. Isn't this just a bigger issue in our society, and isn't it better to address and put our resources in addressing the bigger issue instead of being lulled to sleep by the idea that metal detectors will protect our children? What pro table, anybody want to grapple with that?
It's not that we don't realize there are other issues that are leading to this. It's just that in the society we're in right now, we want to make sure the kids are safe at school. The one place they need to be safe is at school. The kids that we saw in Cincinnati, it didn't impact them at all as far as they were walking through. No one was late except for the girl that was outside talking. She was late, but she'd been there for half an hour over there. But everyone else just walked through. It's part of their day-to-day life. They've been doing it for 17 years. The kids don't think anything about it. They just do that. As far as all the things that go on that make kids carry guns, those things will still need to be addressed. This will just allow them to be safe in the schools so that we know they're fine there.
I'll talk briefly. The issue with the feelings and the psychology and the family life, and that's something that has to be addressed, like that she said, on a wider scale. The school can't solve that problem. The school has never been able to solve that problem. The school, I remember my sister told me, and maybe some of the JCPS people can tell me, that the reason why some of the curriculum is set the way it is across the schools is because you have a homeless population, and you want to make sure when that kid goes to every different school that they end up sometimes, that they'll still be on the right track, because they're always moving. So it's a lot of things that we have to take into account, obviously, when you have a large school system, but I don't think that should cripple us. I mean, obviously parents need to parent, and we need, people to take responsibility for what's going on in their home, but until we grapple with that problem, let's keep, as Shannon said, keep them safe in the building.
Let's hear from our central student.
I feel that, like Ms. Moorman has said, mental illness is a big issue. It is a very big issue, and I say this as a Black young female, and I just say this as a JCPS student. Now, we look at the media every day. I'm pretty sure a majority of my friends at school know that young man that got shot at Fern Creek in 2015. So it's kind of even traumatizing to see the fact that that happened in a JCPS school. And then it's kind of like, there's no recovery for anybody. It's like, after he's healed, he goes right back to school. There's no healing for us after, the 100 homicide happened in West End Louisville by a Black male or African male. We don't have an identity, so it's kind of like we have multiple names. So I just think with metal detectors, I feel like we're not getting anywhere. We're not, and like Ms. Moorman said also, we're not nobody's asking us, and even when they do, nobody says anything, and that's where our comments step into place as the footstep for my generation. But it's also with the parenting skills. Now, in my home, my mom did, she cared about my safety very well. I'm responsible to text her every day, even when I get on the bus, and say, hey, Mom, I made it on the bus. I'm responsible to let her know wherever I go, and that's not taught within everyone's homes. And everyone is, they're eligible to teach their kid as they feel. Even with his son disagreeing with the metal detectors. I feel like, this panel is full of adults and there's 2 youth on here, was this advocated to other schools? How is this information getting pushed out? And they were so focused on comparing us, Kentucky, to other states in America, when we're only Kentucky, we can only be Kentucky. JCPS is the biggest school system in the whole country. So we're like, well, Cincinnati has metal detectors and they've been doing this for 17 years. And my biology teacher she told me to never use the word adapt. So those kids go through a routine daily. So maybe their school time is adjusted, but we're a big school. We have so much we can do in a whole school year. And to add metal detectors, and that'll take 10 to 45 minutes. What about my breakfast? Y'all know breakfast is the most important meal of the day, right?
Let me ask you this, and if Sean could bring up this thing, and this is for our students as well as anybody else that wants to talk about this. Here you go, UK fans required to pass through metal detectors. That started October 11th.
And that's another thing. That is an arena. We're talking about a school. Y'all talking about airports. Y'all talking about football games.
We also have Wisconsin Athletic Department. Okay, they have now instituted at their athletic events the use of metal detectors. That's this year. Question for the student, as well as anybody on the panel. Concerts, sporting events, travel in the airport, all kinds of things. When you go to the courthouse, you go through a metal detector. What is it that's special about a school that makes us so afraid to put metal detectors there? What is the difference? If you want to go see a basketball game this year at UK, you're going to go through a metal detector. What is it about school for our students or anybody else? What is it that makes us so afraid to put metal detectors when all these other areas we have?
Because we have to go to school every day. That's something that we have to do every day. We spend 8 hours in school, not to mention time after school. And also because school is supposed to be, well, they say it's supposed to be like your home, but you're supposed to feel comfortable at school. It's not like going to a football game or a concert. It's school. Like, people at school, most of the people who go to school, the teachers and the administrators. So, yeah, that's what makes it different.
Anybody else on the panel?
Just one thing.
Yes, sir.
The primary purpose of school is to provide an education to our youth. That always has to be the top goal. And one of the things you want to do is to prepare the students for real life. And metal detectors are now real life. The earlier we teach them why we have it and their purpose, the more equipped they'll be to deal with it later. Even the workplace now, there's several workplaces, which is every day. And your family's welfare depends on your work. You have to go through the metal detectors. They're just everywhere. But here's the thing that we should really fear about putting metal detectors in, is the overall decay of student privacy over the years. I went to school in the 60s. We didn't have drug dogs going to school. We didn't have warrantless searches of lockers. We didn't have cameras in the schools. We didn't have drug testing. We didn't have those things. And we got a good education. We learned to grow into our rights. We learned what our rights were. And when we became 18, we knew how to use them. When I look at the education system today, drug dogs in the school, cameras off in the hallways, warrantless searches of property, of students, maybe based upon rumor, now metal detectors. What are we teaching them? need to take these lands and turn them into mines. And the way you do that is through education. Is our primary purpose. And we can add all the layers of security we want. Every time we have a problem, we fall back on security. We have a heroin problem, right? What, Trinity High School with drug testing is an answer? We have guns in school. We fall back on metal detectors. We do drug dogs in the schools. Those guns are associated with drugs. And the problem still persists.
Let me ask this question to the whole panel. It's been some school districts, and it's been suggested here in JCPS, that rather than having walk-through metal detectors and having x-ray machines and that type of thing at the schoolhouse doors, that they have a type of situation where you have school security maybe going through the halls with wands that can detect metal, guns, things like that, maybe randomly stopping students and checking them. Spot checks where some districts do this. They on a Monday they'll go to one school, on a Tuesday they'll go to another school, on a Wednesday another school, that type of thing. It saves a lot of money. It saves a lot of money, and those that implement it believe it has just as much in terms of what it offers as far as effectiveness as well as deterrence. What about those kinds of measures? What do you think about that, Ms. Murphy?
I'll only talk for 45 seconds. I shudder at that prospect because in my head I see well-intentioned people with their own biases, their own time on the street themselves, security officers, police officers off duty, full-time police officers, who, for reasons that may not be evil, for reasons that they may not understand, stopping and checking the people that quite naturally, as human beings, they may think are more likely in their mind to have contraband of some kind. And this is a problem that we've got with policing in the general society. And while I agree with Keith, for instance, that we need to prepare our students to get ready for the real world, I'm not prepared to prepare young students to deal with what are effectively, outside the school building, unconstitutional stop and frisk. So I could be talked out of this opinion, but I can't imagine it happening.
I'd just like to ask a quick question of the panel, and we can just go straight down the line and y'all can answer this. Right now, this is a conversation. Right now, this is just, more or less trying to get a feel into the community or whatever. Here's my question, and we'll start with Shannon, and then we'll go to Nick and Felicia and just go straight down the line. If this would become a reality and the money would be in place to make this reality, would race enter into the scenario once it would be announced that this is a reality? Would there be a conversation, an enhanced conversation coming from the black community then, and also the white community? Would race enter into the scenario if it would become a reality?
If we could have the money put in every single school, which I think is the only way to do that, I think then race is not an issue in that because everyone is treated equally. I don't want them to go to some schools because that's going to be labeled the problem schools or whatever, which historically are going to be the black schools. We don't want that. We want the safety in all the schools. So it only has to be equal to everyone or it won't work.
Nick?
And I absolutely agree with that. It should be in all the schools. It shouldn't be selectively, let's pick this school, let's pick that school. I think this is a situation, as Felicia pointed out with the numbers, generally the past 10 to 15 years, the worst school shootings we've seen have been in white schools, predominantly white schools. And but it's a situation where that shouldn't factor in at all. The goal here is to protect all students. And to go back just to the thing about having officers, which is a totally bad idea, having officers wanting people down. It opens it up to subjective, interpretation of who thinks who has a gun, and it's just that would be right for abuse for something with race, in my opinion. But having metal detectors at every single school, that's an objective thing. Everybody, it doesn't matter who you are, you're walking through that door, you're walking through the metal detector, you're walking through the screening process. And either you get through, or if you got a gun or you got a weapon, you don't. And it shouldn't matter, what school, it shouldn't matter whether the school's in the East End, the West End, or in the South End. It should be in every single school, and every student should be protected, whether you're rich or poor, black or white, whether you're how old you are, every student should be protected, and it shouldn't factor in.
Felicia?
I don't think, I agree with both of them. You have to do it at all schools. You can't selectively just say it's gonna be at quote unquote problem schools. I don't think there's more to say. I think it's at all.
My question is, would race become the conversation?
I don't think race will become the conversation unless you do it the way Mr. Murphy says, and you use your dollars and you say, well, you know, we only have this amount of money, so how can we use this